everyone, I hope you're well. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I thought today I'd pop by and we create a nice simple card. So I'm going to grab my cardstock, and the actual card that we'll be working on is Pink Frog Super Smooth Card 300 GSM, and I've cut the card 4 inches by 6 inches. And this is the base that we will work on, and then we'll add a little mat and add to our card. So we're just going to create something really simple. So let me just grab a little scrap of card, which is a real scrap of card, and I'm going to use Garden Delights TE15, and I'm going to use this stamp here, which I think is just beautiful. Take this stamp here, and if I take the stamp and place it on my card, you can just see how beautiful it is. It's got branches on there. It says quiet place, nature and nurture, and I absolutely love that. So I'll just take an acrylic block, which is not easy because I've got them strewn all over the place. Let's just move that out of the way. There we go. Just take, I think I might need a bigger piece of card. What about that one? And what I'm going to do before I stamp anything, I'm just going to check what things look like. So I've got the stamp, which I've not put straight on the acrylic block, and I'm going to take my VersaFine Clair Morning Mist, which is the grey ink. And what I want to see is, I want to see what the first generation looks like. So the first generation doesn't have to be perfect. And then I want to see what the second generation looks like. And it's the second generation that I want. And just such good quality stamps. You can still see the detail in the second generation. So beautiful. So let's take our stamp. I always do a little bit of a test first. So let's ink the stamp up, and again give that a really good inking. Don't scrimp on your ink. Morning Mist is rather a favourite of mine. I'm just going to sort of dab off the excess like we did before, and then I'm going to place the second generation onto my main card piece. There we go, and let's lift this up. Such a truly beautiful stamp, just truly beautiful. Right, now if you want it in the first generation, you keep it in the first generation, no problem at all. Now I want to extend that design a little bit, so I'm going to use my Artsy Alphas and Numbers TE16, and what I love about this stamp is it's wonderful for, in its own right, as a background stamp, but also for extending designs a little bit. So for instance, I want to take a little bit of the detail from the bottom of the stamp, and again I can just take off the first generation, and then I can add a little bit of the second generation just to my project. And it just works, because it's one of those stamps that just works beautifully for extending the design. So let's just take this, and I can again just take off that strongest of the colours, and then let's extend the design here, which you can just about see. I will lift that up so that you can see. Let me just show you. And it just extends the design just beautifully without detracting from the design. And I love when you can extend designs like this. So again, if you want the first generation or the second generation, that's entirely up to you. But sometimes I like to do something a little bit different. So I'm just going to extend the design a little bit more. So use the image at the bottom again. So let's take off that first generation. And look how you can keep extending that. And then let's add the second generation. So it's a wonderful stamp for extending designs. I can just take one of the letterings. Again, first generation. Look how you can extend the design. And then I can add the second generation to the card. It extends anything beautifully, just beautifully. Right. Now I said we're only going to do a simple design, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Now if you wanted to extend this, I'm not on my main card. Let's just wipe some of that grey ink. Just take a little bit of that ink off there. Now if you wanted to extend this design, you could take the stamp and you could extend the design quite easily. So look, you can extend the design. It extends beautifully. You could even go to the top with the little bit of ink that's left over. And look, you've extended that design all the way down. Doesn't it look beautiful? Just extended like that. And if you wanted to, you could then cut this as a strip. Obviously, you would use your cutters just so that it's all straight. But you could then cut this into a strip, or you could stamp direct onto your card like I've done. But even with your leftovers, that's leftovers, and I've not even cut it straight, but that's leftovers. So you could use that for another design. And so could you use this. You could even sort of, so it's nice when you can use leftovers. So you can tear your card like so, just so that you've got nice jagged edges. And you could even add these two pieces together. So even with your leftovers, there's always something you can do. So let's carry on with our card. So I'm doing something really simple. So where's mine? I'm then going to take my 6x6 stencil Wildflower. And I'm going to decide which floral I want. So I want this floral here. So let's sort of go in to there. So I'm using the 6x6 stencil. And what I'm going to use is I'm going to use some white paint. Now you may ask yourself, why are you using white paint when you're on white card? Two reasons. One, it gives texture. And two, the colours that I use on the top will be even brighter. So it doesn't matter, you can use a piece of car sponge, whatever you want. I'm just going to take the white, and can you see that I'm working that in to the cut and dry foam or your blending tool, and I'm working that in. So let's just take the white. Don't add any big blobs, just dab and that will give you some texture. I'm then going to take ruby paint. You can take any red paint that you might have in your collection. I'm using Dina Wakley paints. I'm then going to take the red, and again you can see I'm working that in to the cut and dry foam. Now if you're worried about going over the edge of your stencil, then by all means just mask off the other areas of your stencil. So I've sort of got a first layer on there, so I'm going to take some more red or ruby, and I'm going to work that in again and just add layers of that paint. I'm not too bothered about the stem having too much darkness. So what I'm going to do then, just to give a little bit of a shadow, I'm going to use eggplant. So take a little bit of eggplant. I'm working on my non-stick craft sheet just to keep everywhere tidy-ish to some fashion. And I'm going to take the eggplant and I'm just going to add a little bit of shadow with the eggplant. Now that's got some white on, so we won't do that. Let's take the eggplant again. So we'll just take that eggplant and we'll just chuck it across the room. So we'll take the eggplant and we'll just add a little bit of the eggplant just to give shadow. I can then go back to the red and just blend that out a little bit, just so that we're adding a little bit of shadow. So I'm going to take the eggplant again, Tracy can't speak, and then I'm going to take the eggplant again, and I'm just dabbing just to give a little bit of shadow. I can then use the red that's still on the cut and dry foam and just make sure, let's add a little bit of the eggplant just down onto the stem. So I can just make sure, and I can take this off and we can see if we're happy with what we have, which I am. And that just gives you a little bit of shading as well. So then we're just going to add a little part of the floral here. So we need to take a little bit of that white. Don't know whether there's enough on the cut and dry foam, so let's add a little bit of the white. If you haven't got any sponges, I mean sponges, because they've got that density, give the texture, but you could even use a dry wipe. So I'm just going to add the white, and it's only tinged a little bit with the eggplant, but that doesn't matter, it's fine. So then I'm going, and you can see I'm not letting the paint dry. If I keep it sort of open, in other words wet, it just means I've got that little bit of movement a little bit more. So we'll just, and because it's a little bit wet, it blends beautifully. Let's go down the stem and we'll just continue to just add layers to our design. And I can see before my eyes when I add another layer of that paint. It's richer, it's denser as I add another layer of that paint. The colour is richer and denser. I'm just going to take a little bit more. I'm trying to move away from the white. And you can see that I work that paint in. I don't use thick clumps. And again, when I go in a third time, and I've not even dried the paint, even when I go in a third time, because I'm adding layers, it's got that depth. let's take a little bit of the eggplant. So we'll take our eggplant, and then just to give a little bit of shadow, we'll add the eggplant, and then we'll blend out with the red. So we can go back to the eggplant and just add a little bit of shading. And I'm just going to add a little bit more of that eggplant, and then use the red again just to blend that out. But it's definitely layers that bring that to life. There we go. So let's just move our card out of the way, and let's give everywhere a little bit of a tidy up. Now, if your paint is still wet on your non-stick craft sheet, then you can brayer that paint up and you can reuse that onto another piece of card quite easily and create another background. I'm just going to clean mine up because it's quite dry, so when I brayer it, nothing much will brayer off there. Always give your area a little bit of a clean, she says, as she's got ink pads all over the place. But just give that a little bit of a clean, and then just give your stencil a little bit of a wipe. If you've got a jar of sort of a bowl of water just on one side, you can use that. You can also take the paint that's left on your stencil and you can add that to another background as well. So there's always options for adding more backgrounds, etc. So I'm just going to give my hands a little bit of a wipe. So I always like to get the thick of the paint off because you don't want your stencils to have sort of big globules of paint just over them. So just give your hands a bit of a clean. As you can see, I've got white paint, and you don't really want to add that to your card blank. But can you see, just with those two colours, you've got the depth, etc. in there, and the design in the background has been pushed down into the background. So I'm then going to take, maybe I should just tidy a few of these stamps up a little bit. I'm then going to take my other background stamp, which is TE11 background elements, and we're going to add a touch of text. Let's bring in some scrap bits of card. Now at this stage with the morning mist, you need to decide whether you want the text in the foreground or the background. So if you use the first generation, it'll be more in the foreground. I'm going to use the second generation just so that that is a little bit softer and it feels like it's in the background rather than the foreground. So I'm just taking off the excess and then just adding a little bit of that text. So again, take off the first generation and you can just add a little bit straight over the floral as well, which looks really nice. So let's just take that again, stamp off the excess, and let's add a little bit. It's just, they're just wonderful stamps, wonderful background stamps, how they work so beautifully together. They just work so beautifully. Right, shall we do a little bit of shading? So I'm now going to take my little Inktense pencil. Now, you see where I've added that VersaFine Clair onto the paint? you're going to need to blot that, because some of that will come up because you're on that acrylic paint. So either blot it or dry it, whichever you prefer to do. But you do need to blot that. So I'm going to add a little bit of shading, and I love the texture that the paint gives to the design. It really works really nicely. Let me make sure I've got no paint on there. I'm going to take my fine brush, and then I'm just going to just blend this out, just so that it gives a little bit of shading, just to the edge of that floral. There we go. And again, it just sort of makes that pop a little bit more. It makes the flowers pop a little bit more. So I've got no kitchen rolls. Let's just get another little strip of kitchen roll. And then we can add some touches of white. So, and again, it's always better if you just let your paint dry, because obviously there's still moisture in there because I've not dried any of my paint layers. So let's just add a little bit of white down there. The little touches just really help that. And then here we've got some sentiments on TE15. Cherish today, tomorrow is a gift. Isn't that the truth? So let's grab the stamp set again. Which is that one. So hopefully I've got a little scrap of white card somewhere. Nobody needs an acrylic block that big. Let's just grab a smaller acrylic block. Let's see if I've got a piece of scrap card. So now I'm going to stamp this in my black ink. Just make sure I've not got the black ink here. Obviously I haven't. Okay. I don't know whether I've got that. So we'll take our black ink, and the black ink will bring that sentiment into the foreground. So we'll just cut this, and again, it's up to you whether you actually cut it out into smaller pieces or you cut it out as a whole piece. And now I've decided I'm going to cut it out. So cherish today, tomorrow is a gift. So I'm just cutting that into smaller pieces. There we go. Just push everything out of the way like you do, because there's not enough room on your desk. And before I commit, I'm just going to sort of check. There we go. So let's grab our adhesive, and we will add some shading because you don't want that to, you know, become lost in the background. Let's add that. And hopefully Tracy will remember to let the adhesive dry a little bit or grab hold, just so that I don't try to put the shading on like I normally do. There we go. Sometimes I like just splitting the sentiments up a little bit. It just gives it a different feel. Just makes it look a little bit different each time you do a card. And I like how even with a simple card I can have 100 things everywhere, every single time. So we're just going to add a little bit, and you can see now, because I've let that grab hold, the adhesive, I'm not holding the page. So really it is best practice just to let that adhesive just grab hold, and it doesn't move then, which is just wonderful. So we'll just pick up a little bit of that water. Now the image underneath won't move because that's a permanent ink pad. So let's just, and it just nicely adds a little bit of shading, really defines that edge a little bit, just what we want. Let's just mop that up. And then we're going to add some splatters. Now you can put strips of card over there so that you don't hit your sentiments. I really want it sort of on the florals. There we go, just so it makes it pop a little bit more, just so that you can see that. And apart from the sentiment, it is completely flat, so that's rather nice. And then when you add it, if we add it to a black mat, which is 4 1/4 by 6 1/4, the image then really pops. So let's just add that to a black mat. And again, Tracy hasn't let the splatters dry, which, you know, good practice is to just let that dry a little bit. There we go. But it just looks beautiful on a black mat. Let me just add a few sort of splatters so that the black card is included a little bit. There we go. Just so that black card is sort of incorporated in the design, especially with it being quite clean and simple. So let's just pick that up. There we go. And then we'll just add, where are we? We'll just add, she says. Can't see a thing. Can't see the wood for the trees. Is that what they say? There it is. I'm just going to grab TE12, and if you look, this would go perfectly with that background stamp. So you could add the background stamp, this one, in the background, and then you could add that in the foreground and it'd work beautifully. I'm going to use the little bird. So let's grab the little bird. And Tracy can lose an acrylic block in 5 seconds. Let's put that sentiment back. Take the little bird. And again, we want the little bird in black because you want that in the foreground. Make sure your bird's not going to fall off. Ask me why I say that. Just, we've got our little bird on there, just perfect. Just a lovely finishing touch. And again, you would let that dry, and you could add white touches if you want. Personally, I just want him in black this time, and he's sitting on the edge of that sentiment, so it's just perfect, just so that you can see the little bird on there. And then if I add this to a 5 by 7 inch card blank, just so that that pops even more. And this is what I love about stamps and stencils. Every time you use them, you can make them look different. And if you get the right designs, they don't date, and they're there year after year. There we go. Let's just pop that down. And again, just make sure you sort of press in the centre so that you've got good adhesion of your card. And just so that you can see that it is completely flat apart from the sentiments, and if you wish you can go in even darker with your shading around the floral. So I hope you've enjoyed that little demo and you'll give that a go. Love to all, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.